that's causing our trend up is Medicare Advantage. As to the scope, we can get those numbers for you, and if you're interested in seeing those, compare last year's data to this year's, but overall, that's what we're comparing it to. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. And I would certainly be in the year-over-year denial
Sure.
increase. You can get it to us. Is there, I'll stop there, but thank you.
Can I hop in on this Medicare Advantage questions? I think it is likely not appropriate to answer this question here. But I would be very interested to know whether all Medicare Advantage is the same here. And what I mean more specifically is we of course have no regulatory power. Nobody here in this room has any regulatory power over any Medicare Advantage, but there are some more local plans that I think arguably we could have some influence on. And if this trend of increased denied claims and the challenges to you is indeed the local carriers, I think it would be interesting to know that.
I'm not understanding the.
So do we know, is it like MVP or is it, do we know which Medicare Advantage plan?
So dive into the actual contracts. We actually don't have that detail. We have it more of our financial class, which is Medicare Advantage.
Okay.
Sorry, it's for you to see my multitasking. All right. Any other board questions related to finance? Yeah, so related to the cost inflation, pharmaceutical expenses, and or commercial price that we want to cover at this point?
So Sarah, sorry, can you hear me?
I was considering whether or not we could move to an executive session, but maybe it makes sense to do it at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, we can certainly, yeah, thank goodness Russ is on, okay.
I'm happy to jump in if that is appropriate. I think the question, so I think if the board has a question that may or may not be more appropriately answered in executive session, that question could be asked and put out there now in a broad way, and perhaps we could defer to the hospital as to whether that question could be answered publicly or whether that implicates some confidential information. And if it does implicate some confidential information, knowing that would help provide the board a basis to move to executive session.
Okay.
And
so I'll ask a question in a broad general way and we'll see where it goes. And yeah, so my question is whether or not Brattleboro has received rate increases from insurance companies that exceed, sorry, let me ask it a different way. Does Brattleboro receive different levels of rate increases from different insurers?
Different level of rate increases from different insurers. Would you mind elaborating on that? I'm not quite sure what.
Sure. I'll give you an example. Yeah. For example, you know, the answer would be yes if Brattleboro receives a 5% increase from United, but a 15% increase from Blue Cross. What I'm getting at is trying to understand whether or not the rates that you're negotiating with insurance companies are different.
So essentially, it would be based on individual contract.
Correct.
So again, yeah, I apologize for not quite understanding where we're going with the question. I mean, each contract is individually negotiated on the commercial side, but again, on the Medicare, it's based on the fee schedule.
Right. I'm going to the commercial side. In those contracts, I presume that you have different rate increases each year from the different insurers. Is that fair or no?
I think what we'd be more comfortable discussing the rates in an executive session, if that's okay with the board.
Fine with me, Mr. McCracken. I don't know if you think this should be answered publicly or not. I'll defer to your guidance.
I think the board could address this in an executive session. And so the way to do that under the open meeting law is the process in section 313A1. It requires 2 findings of the board. The first is that premature general public knowledge would place BMH at a substantial disadvantage with respect to the negotiation of a contract. So I think that that's the finding that the board needs to make as the first step of this. And then the second step, it would be to go into executive session to discuss that. Particular material.
Well, Mr. McCracken, why don't we do this? Why don't we keep going, because I don't think we actually have an executive session line set up. So it might make more sense to just continue and then come back to this at a more convenient time.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we can finish this up, and if there's someone who could help us get that link ready in case it's needed, that would be helpful. Thank you, Susan. And the other question I think that came up when we were reviewing the budget was understanding Brattleboro definitely seems like it's like a lot of hospitals is in a place where they're trying to figure out the new normal. And I think that it's hard to predict anything these days, but just curious, as you are thinking through kind of the sustainability of your hospital, you talked about a permanent designation and some important care transformation, just like kind of what key metrics that you're tracking for the next, say, 2 to 4 years to see which win the win, how Brattleboro will be successful in meeting its community needs.
Well, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who once said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And so what we do know, Sarah, is that value-based payments are going to grow, and we fully embrace that. What we believe is going to be key to the success of whatever the value-based payment may be, is truly doing more outside of the hospital and being less hospital-centric than we have historically been. So really beefing up our medical group practice to care for patients in the medical group. We fervently believe that patients are always cared for best as close to home as possible. So trying to do things more in the community, like our HealthWorks ACT, having that as a model for other services, hopefully being able to actually have a community paramedicine program where we're actually caring for patients in the home, keeping them healthy in the home. We have 7 key strategic priorities. So we do look to say, how are we elevating the health of the community? It's not just about what happens when they cross the threshold of coming into a hospital. We'd prefer that they don't come into the hospital. So really transforming our system so that we are really much more focused on what takes place in the community, working with community partners, finding shared service agreements where we can. We track these 7 key strategic priorities. We have SMART goals for each one of those. Our board reviews them every month. That for right now is our key. We know we need to be much more of an agile, integrated delivery system than a hospital. And I think that's where our attention is at this point in time, is how do we build this integrated delivery system so that overall costs are going down, not just the cost of operations, but really the cost of what it takes to care for people.
Thank you. Just any other board questions or those from the healthcare advocate?
Yes.
Good job. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sam, you go.
I just want to steer. So Sam Peisch, health policy analyst at the Healthcare Advocates Office. I just want to steer folks to page 9 of the narrative, where there was a breakdown of FTEs. This is in the administrative costs section. One thing that stood out to me, at least, was that your average and median C-suite salaries seem to exceed physician salaries, and the non-clinical admin salaries seem to be higher than nursing salaries. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on that and maybe explain that a bit more.
Sorry, I'm just pulling that.
Yeah.
Right. The C-suite, if you could repeat your question, I was pulling the document while you were referring. The C-suite exceeding the physician salaries?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it just seems a bit higher. I'm just wondering if that's a deliberate thing or more of an incidental finding.
No, I think one of the things to remember on the physicians, these are the FTE employed physicians. We also use locum physicians in our emergency room and other areas. So this number isn't fully representative of what we pay out for physician costs.
Got it. And would you mind, I'm not listing everything out, but I'm just curious what falls in that other admin bucket, because it's a pretty large salary chunk.
Right. That is if you remember in our narrative, we discussed the fact that we do have a company by the name of Southern Vermont Health Services, which the hospital reports under. Those are the intercompany transfers of administrative costs and salaries.
Got it. I'll turn it over to Mike.
I'm sorry, I believe I may have misstated. I thought you were referring to the administrative costs that were on page 8 of page 9 of the narrative. Is that what you were referring to, or were you referring back to page 10 on the actual FTE breakout of the other administrative?
At the bottom where it's underneath the FTE tab, Sarah, yeah, where it says other administrative, and then the 286 FTEs. I was just curious about what, yeah.
Right.
So Jennifer, the median salary for physician, does that include nurse practitioners and PAs as well? And is that driving the median down?
It is going to drive the median down, but the other thing that's driving the median down is this is just for employed physicians. Referring to the question of the other administrative, that is going to be every other administrative position that doesn't fit within a physician, mid-level nursing, C-suite, directors or managers. So it's everybody else in the hospital.
Okay. Thank you. And Mike has a couple questions.
Thank you. I'll steer back to our sort of traditional question now about ratio of pre-care to bad debt. I just want to recognize that your projection for 23 is that you'll have, for every dollar of bad debt, $6.5. I'm sorry, for every dollar of free care, $6.5 of bad debt. And 22 was similar, 1 to 5.1. Your budget projection, what you're budgeting for next year is a 1 to 2. You know, for every dollar of free care, $2 of bad debt. That's going in the right direction from our perspective. What do you have to do to accomplish that?
Well, first of all, it comes down to data. Traditionally, Brattleboro Memorial Hospital has aggregated both bad debt and charity care. So to try and tease it out from prior years has been very, very challenging. What we want to do next year is actually be more data centric and be able to prove out the difference between the charity care and bad debt. So that's what we really need to do, is be able to look at it from a more data centric place, so we have better numbers as to the dollars per charity care versus bad debt.
So the reason for my question, I think maybe it's obvious, but we're saying that we think that having as close to a 1-to-1, a better ratio between bad debt and free care would be a sign of hospitals doing a good job of reaching people, whatever that effort takes. I fully understand why one hospital may have more uncompensated care than another hospital. Payer mix is complicated, but I don't understand why hospitals would vary in this ratio. I don't know what would be different about the people in Brattleboro versus Rutland who owe the hospital money, other than the hospital's effectiveness at reaching those people.
Right, and so we are looking at that. One, we do have a community services liaison that attempts to reach those individuals for them to fill out their charity care applications, as well as trying to get them onto Medicaid and their determination. We also know that we have one across our entire continuum of care. We've been exploring options of how can we bring outreach to our community for the charity care applications and Medicaid determination, including speaking to another nonprofit in the area this week of how can we branch and partner with them to get this message out, that there are resources available for care.
That's great to hear. I don't mean to make this sound like it's easy. I know it's hard work, hard to engage with people who might not want to be engaged with. I appreciate that answer. I'm sure it's correct that it's going to take multiple approaches to reach people. I think that's my only question. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board before we turn back to the potential executive session? Okay, I think the question that we have for you is if BMH believes that sharing their negotiated commercial insurers would cause them any disadvantage. Is that right, Russ? Or maybe I'll let you talk.
Thanks.
I can address it.
Sure.
I can do it because then I'll just move. It's fine. So my question for you, Brattleboro folks, is whether or not you believe that publicly sharing the rate increases received from specific commercial insurers would disadvantage Brattleboro in its negotiations with commercial insurers.
Yes, Chair Foster, we do believe that. We actually don't do our own negotiations. That comes through a shared service agreement, and we have a company that does that for us. So we'd also not like to put them in a difficult situation, Chair Foster.
Understood. Great. Well, given that the testimony is this would publicly disadvantage Brattleboro, I moved to find that premature general public knowledge of the rate increases received by Brattleboro from different commercial insurers would clearly place Brattleboro at a substantial disadvantage with respect to its negotiations of contracts with commercial insurers.
I second.
All those in favor, please say
Aye.
Aye.
aye. And then second.
Who's? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
It's a logistical question that should wait till after the next vote.
Okay. Second, I move that we go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1 to consider Brattleboro's commercial payer contracts, specifically the rate increases received by Brattleboro from different commercial insurers.
Second.
And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously, although I have two questions. I'm not sure if we have an executive session line set up.
We have a link, and I need to know who I should send it to at Brattleboro for you all.
Lainey's email is not even on. What's Lainey's?
Yeah, I'll pull up the email.
Her email's up, isn't it? No, it's out.
Oh, you put that?
Laura did.
Give us a minute. Should I ask? Should I? Just put on.
Russ.
We should, I wanted to be clear on who was attending the executive session. So I believe it is the board members, board staff. So Sarah Lindberg and team, Susan, executive director, myself, and maybe other of the board legal staff. The Brattleboro team, the healthcare advocate, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Peisch, anyone else from your office who would join. And then I think if it's possible, we'd like to ask Ms. Holland to join and do a separate confidential transcript for that.
Of course, no trouble.
May I
Excuse me. Oh,
That's okay. It may just say that we don't have the information right in front of us. We may need to set up an even separate time to do this where we can have that information right in front of us. We don't have it right in front of us here today. I don't want to waste your time with that if we don't really know what the rate differential is between what's been negotiated between the commercial insurance companies. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I mean, I think it makes sense to probably try some of the questions, and if you don't have the information, we can take that as the answers, and we can see if it's appropriate to reconvene. I think at least some direction may have a sense, but if not, then we'll deal with that.
Fantastic. Well, we will do our best.
Great.
And who shall I email this link to so that we can get you on the right link?
Sir, it will go to E. Ingraham. So it's EINGRAHAM at bmhbt.org.
May I ask who that was speaking just now?
That's Laura Bruno.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we should be all set. We'll send this over. Why don't we take just a quick 4-minute break and we'll jump into the executive session at 2:30. And for those that are not going into the executive session but participating, I don't anticipate will be very long. I think under 20 minutes would be my guess. So we can adjourn this and we'll go back at 2:30 into the executive session. Thank you.
Ms. Lindberg, do you have my email address?
Probably better get that.
Thank you. That's BEE.HOLLAND@gmail.com. I'll see y'all there. Thank you so much.
Looks like we just may need a moment for Cassidy and Member Walsh.
I feel like I'm here.
I feel like I never leave here. Our lives are being consumed by being in these boxes.
Thank you for your consideration. All set.
Okay. All right, great. So we will resume the Green Mountain Care Board's hearing with Brattleboro. So Ms. Lindberg, Director Lindberg, take it away. Thanks.
Sure. I think this is a good time to offer a chance for public comment. Are there any comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand function if so. Okay, hearing none, I'll give Brattleboro an opportunity to have the last word here. Anything you want to make sure that comes across before we adjourn?
I just have one quick thing to say. Director Lindberg, thank you so much for your patience and help with this Green Mountain Care Board budget process. Being a first-year CFO here in Vermont, I do appreciate the partnership that you've offered us. So thank you. And with that, I'll kick it over to Chris.
Well, I would just add to that. We didn't say it as we were going through the budget tool. I know that it was a little wonky, but it was great. This is great data. It's great to have benchmarks. It's great to have these comparisons, and we're very excited about that. And I guess just the final thing I'd say is, yeah, next year we'll mark our 120th anniversary of caring for this community and providing great service to this community. We look forward to working with the Green Mountain Care Board and assuring that there is a community health system in Brattleboro for at least the next 120 years. We look forward to that. We exist for no other reason but to improve the health and lives of this wonderful community. And we thank you for anything you can do to help us in that endeavor. So thank you for your time and for a great discussion today.
Thank you. We will work on a few follow-up items, and I believe that's it for the hearing for Brattleboro. I know the board has other business, but thanks for your time this all day today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Great job, Sarah, leading us through this maiden voyage through this process. And for this process is your brainchild and your work. So I thought it went exceedingly well. So thank you so much. You should be really proud of the effort. It's great.
Matt, Flora, Russ, Jeff, they're the ones that deserve the kudos, honestly. So it takes a village. So, and thank you to the advocate for your participation.
Great. Great. So we'll turn to the next agenda item, which I think is the OneCare potential vote. I don't have the agenda up, but I think that was next. Great. Okay.
All right, wonderful. I'm Michelle Sawyer, a health policy project director with the Green Mountain Care Board, and I'm joined by staff attorney Russ McCracken to walk through the FY23 OneCare revised budget condition reconsideration and potential vote. This came up last week under new business during the board meeting, and we had a week to collect public comment and consideration. We did receive 2 public comments during this time. One encouraged the expansion of the compensation cap to the director level leadership of OneCare. And the other public comment noted that they disagreed with the procedural fairness and the regulatory authority being put forth by the Green Mountain Care Board. I will pass it to Russ McCracken to walk us through the motion language as it stands, and then how we may move to modify.
Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle noted, there we did get a comment from OneCare around this. And so this is to kind of go through, again, I think what we just introduced briefly last week. What you're looking at here are the 3 conditions that were part of the board's June 16th approval of OneCare's amended FY23 budget. Specifically, we're looking at the second condition, and there is on the next slide some potential motion language here that modifies the second condition to clarify how that condition is calculated and enforced. And the modification is to have it on an aggregate basis, so aggregating all of the VP level and above executives rather than on an individual basis, and marking and capping that aggregate amount against the aggregate of the 50th percentile of the benchmark that's used by OneCare for the compensation of those executives. No other changes to the condition that was approved on June 14th. This change is, I would note, sort of aligned with the only information that we've been able to get so far from OneCare about the benchmark used for these salaries. So I would turn it over to board questions, comments, discussion, and any public comment.
I'll go first. I made this motion last week. I think it's an improvement so that there's greater clarity in what we were ordering, and so that OneCare has greater discretion to decide how to use its compensation to further the goals, while at the same time providing the same amount of money to be reallocated to the population health programs. So I support the motion, and that's it.
I support the motion as well.
Mr. McCracken, do I need to go ahead and move still?
Yeah, so just for clarity, the motion wasn't actually made last week. We introduced the topic and had a little talk about it, but the motion would need to be made, seconded, voted on, and any public comment taken and then voted on.
Okay. So then I'll let other board members speak, and then we can do public comment, and then I'll move after that. Any other board comment or discussion? Okay, and I'll open it up to public comment. I'm sorry, Mr. Peisch, I should have called on you first. Please go ahead.
No, that's okay. Thanks to the board for returning to this topic. We support the motion. I think we believe it's quite clear that the board has regulatory authority in this area. We do recommend that you consider a minor edit to it, just to clearly specify what benchmark is going to be used. The reason why I raised that as a concern is in the response to the subpoena, OneCare submitted a number of different benchmarks that they used, and it was unclear which one would be used. So in the interest of fulfilling the intent of the motion, we think it makes sense to specify which one would be used. Thanks.
Any other public comment? I think Mr. Peisch's point is well made, but I'm not going to modify it in that regard because we don't know what benchmark was used. And so I think for purposes of this motion, we'll use the benchmark or benchmarks that they had used previously. I don't think we have sufficient information right now based on the subpoena response to identify any particular benchmark.
But I think the point is a good one, and I think that was in part why the subpoena was issued. So hopefully we'll get that information and we can consider it next time. So I move to modify the second condition in the Green Mountain Care Board's June 14th approval of OneCare's revised budget so that the cap on executive compensation established in the condition shall be calculated and enforced on an aggregated basis, capping the total combined compensation for OneCare's executives, VP level and above, in OneCare's fiscal year 23 budget at the total combined amount of the median 50th percentile of the benchmark used by OneCare to establish the compensation for those executives. The condition is otherwise unchanged.
Second.
And I think we had a split vote last time, so we might need a roll call. Mr. McCracken might be the best way to proceed.
Sure, I'll take the roll in alphabetical order. Board Member Holmes.
I'll abstain.
Board Member Lunge.
I will also abstain.
Board Member Merman.
I support the motion.
We'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Board Member Walsh
Yes.
and Chair Foster.
Yes.
So with 3 votes, the motion carries.
Okay, I think that was the last item on our agenda today. Let me just check. Is there any other old or new business to come before the board? And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you to the hospitals and Ms. Holland for their work today. Have a good day.
Thank you. And Chairperson Foster, if I needed to get the spellings, how would you like me to get that? I just had a few.
I can do it now if I know them. I'm happy to stay on.
Yeah,
But we're
it's not a
adjourned
lot.
from the meeting and I can.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sarah Lindberg mentioned the Sugar Center. Well, she was trying to mention it and then someone hopped in and helped her. Were they saying Sugar Center?